All right. Thanks for joining us, Shawn. It's definitely a pleasure to have you, and I'm glad you're feeling better as well. I know you were a
Yeah,
little uh, under the weather a couple days ago. The way I always like to start off is just kind of letting everybody know your story, like right from, I know you played minor hockey in the GTHL from the Toronto area and getting to play in the OHL, and then, moving your way up the ranks and having quite the pro career. So want to just tell us about some of the highlights and the meaningful moments for you starting from your minor hockey days.
yeah. I guess, yeah, no, I'm from Mississauga, so I started playing hockey with Clarkson when I was a little kid. My first year of hockey, I scored 2 goals, played with the leading goal scorer in the league, and I just remember his name was Tyler Flockhart. I just remember being like, I want to be like that guy. So I went from 2 goals to 106 goals and won the trophy he won the year prior, and then end up skipping an age group and then going up and playing with older kids, and then eventually going back to my own age group in novice to play AAA for the Mississauga Senators for 3 years. Then I went to the Toronto Red Wings for 2 years, where I won a championship, GTHL championship,
Oh, that's pretty cool.
and some big tournaments. We were a really good team, like Carnation Cup and everything. And then I went back to Mississauga Senators for my draft year. I decided to not go with a top end team. I went with more coaching. I thought they were two, Mike James and Kevin Rutledge. They coach guys like Stajan, Carlo Koliakovo, Matt Foy, and I ultimately decided to go with coaches that had gotten guys highly drafted the OHL and also to the NHL. So I went. So I kind of went the opposite route than sometimes you're told to believe, where it's you got to be on a great team and playing all the big tournaments and win all the big games. But I was drafted 6th round to the OHL, 101st overall. I played summer hockey with all the top kids, played with them for a lot of years, and I was kind of surprised by the late pick, but kept working hard and ended up making the team as underager. So I got the wild card spot. So that was kind of unexpected, where I only played 37 games and then I had 2 points. So it was kind of the same thing as when I was a little kid, where I just had to just kind of figure it out for a year. And then through that, the next year, it started to click, especially halfway through the year, where I was then drafted in the 2nd round to the NHL. And then by the Detroit Red Wings, where the next year I was traded for Todd Bertuzzi to Florida, and then had a good year that year. The next year, signed with Florida, played World Juniors, won a gold medal with Canada, and then the year after that is when I started my pro career and ended up playing around 550 NHL games for 5 different teams, but majority with Florida. I was there for 5.5 years, and then with the Leafs, with Vancouver, Winnipeg, short stint with Colorado for a playoff push. And then my last few years, I had a lot of injuries and got a little bit older and body started to wear down. And now this is my 2nd year out of the game, and I'm married and just had a daughter, Harlow, and we live in Toronto. And like you said, just going to start coaching and excited about that. So.
Oh, that's a great snapshot and of the career there, and it's definitely lots of unique moments, and you kind of like I think that's pretty cool to go from a 6th round pick to making the team and then having a tough first year and then getting drafted in the 2nd round. Like that's a pretty crucial time period. I don't know if you want to maybe just talk a bit more about your mindset during those years of that draft year. And like you said, you kind of didn't go as high as you wanted to go or thought you might have gone. And then how you responded to that. And obviously that probably pushed you to train really hard that summer. And then, that's pretty rare. My understanding is, you don't see too many 6th round picks make it as an underager. So I don't know if you want to maybe just talk about that year, that draft year and the first years until that, 2nd round NHL draft pick. Those are obviously pretty
Yeah.
big years in your career.
Yeah, I guess my mindset was always like, in my mind, I was like the best player. So obviously going 101st. I didn't, wasn't, I was probably the only one thinking that, but um, I was having a conversation with a friend today. His son plays hockey, and he can't figure it out. But I just told him it's pretty simple. It kind of comes down to just never cutting any corners. Like, I can honestly, when I speak about my career, honestly say I didn't cut any corners. Like, I worked as hard as I could every single practice, every single game. I didn't play great every game, and I didn't practice great all the time, but I worked as hard as I always could. Like, I gave it everything I had. I never took a shortcut. I'd see guys, I remember in Belleville, guys were, there's like a river that goes through, and the water was down, so guys were running across the river instead of doing the full run to save like maybe a kilometer of running, like not even that much, but just those little shortcuts. I always talk about those shortcuts, and I never took those shortcuts. I always took the hard road. I always worked hard, and I think I was mentally stronger because of that. But the guys I have played with, the best players in the world that I've played with, they didn't take those shortcuts. They were hardworking guys, and some of the guys that were really good hockey players, very good hockey players, they were those guys that were, jumping rocks and cheating their teammates. And you know what? Those guys never played any games in the NHL, and some of them were really good hockey players. But it always comes down to not none of those, not taking the shortcut, not taking the easy road. My dad used to say to me, "You're on a fence at this age." I was probably like 11, 10, 12, and he's like, you can go on this side of the fence, or you can go on this side. It's up to you, really. And it's totally what you decide to do. And my mindset was just always focused on, like, I'm going to pursue this. I'm going to do it the right way. If the trainer, if the coach, whoever it is, says it's this amount of work, I was going to give you as hard as I can work, but I'm going to give you the proper amount you asked for, if not more. And like, that's something I think when I see players taking their time to the board, or just from a coaching stance now, I was always going hard to the board. I never went on one knee. I just wanted to, like I'm here to work, so I think that's the mindset you kind of have to have. It's tired, it's draining, it's a grind, but that's what pro sports are. It's really who will outlast the other guy. You got to outgrind your competition.
Yeah, no, I love that. And we had Mike McKenzie on a few weeks back. He's saying the same thing about, like, just figuring it out, that there's no shortcuts, have no regrets. And I think you highlight that really well. And I love the fence analogy too. So, like, that probably stuck with you at a young age. When do you feel like you felt like you figured it out and had that kind of mentality? Obviously pretty young, I would be my guess, but what kind of age was it, that when you were alluding to earlier, that one year when you had 2 goals and you wanted to then beat the guy that was ahead of you? And when would you say that kind of clicked for you? Obviously, it sounded like it was pretty young.
Yeah, I think it was like I said, like, I always kind of had that mindset. Like, when I was 5, just seeing Tyler, who was our leading goal scorer of the league, and he was a year older, so he was going up a year, and then just being like, I want all that. Like, that looks like fun. So, and just being competitive, just going to tournaments and seeing MVP trophy up for grabs and being like, I'm going to win that, and then doing it against all those guys that were drafted ahead of me for years. So, just having that, maybe at times it's a little bit of cockiness and a little bit of swagger in your step, but you kind of need that at times, especially, you put a lot in, it's an emotional game. There's a lot on the line, and you got to have confidence. You got to feel good about yourself. You gotta be mentally strong, and whatever that is. And it's now being retired, I realize how intense it was and how singular focused I was playing.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, that's awesome. And what about maybe a bit about, like, you've talked about confidence a couple of times already, but even as you said, like, it seems like your confidence didn't waver too much, even when you were faced with adversity. Do you want to maybe just, like, speak a bit more to your ability to, like, that draft not going as high as you want, but you not letting that affect your self-belief, and maintaining that accurate self-image is what, I talk about a lot, is that you don't have to, inflate yourself and think you're better than you are, but you got to definitely own who you are and not allow what other people are saying to bring you down. So that sounds like that was definitely a big moment for you in those, especially those formative years again. And then obviously probably throughout your career, but how would you say you kind of maintain that self-confidence and accurate self-image throughout your career?
I would say I was always like a slow starter though. Like I didn't want to step on anyone's toes.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, going to junior, I didn't have a great start, but I was also very respectful to older players. And, uh, you get older, you realize it's business. And like now, like I would tell a young player, like just have that mindset, like it's yours, just be hungry for it. Watching that Michael Jordan documentary and
Yeah.
see how much he wants it. But ultimately, like any player who gets that level does have that same type of mindset in some degree. And I think it goes back to like a little bit of swagger in your step and being confident and knowing who you are, like knowing, like keeping yourself at a high level, like not belittling yourself, like good self-talk. And yeah, I had 2 points my OHL draft year or OHL rookie season, and I don't think anybody saw me being a second round pick in the cards. I didn't even see it, to be honest.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just stayed focused on what I could control, and what
Mm-hmm.
that was still putting a very hard working summer in the books, eating well, doing all the little things that I could do to be better, and not really ever getting focused on the noise. Like I would say, I thought about the OHL draft, but I never really like got too focused on everything. And I kind of just stayed the course, kept working, like never made an excuse to take a day off practice or a workout. And I, I can honestly say, like, I just outworked everybody. Like I went to camp and I would win fitness testing. That was something I thought that gave me an advantage, something that would get me noticed right off the hop. I would work as hard as I could all summer to go to camp and just blow everybody away. And like that got you noticed, but it also gives you confidence as a player to know that like physically you're there, mentally I'm feeling good. It's like it gives you that little bit of confidence, and that it always gave me confidence anyway. So I always stress the young players to be working on their fitness, not just their craft. Fitness does go a long way in this game, and the top players in the world are very, very fit athletes.
Yeah.
And you look at guys like Patrick Kane when he first came in the league. Well, look at how much his body changed and how fit he got to become a more elite player. Sidney Crosby, a very fit player. So I think if you pay attention to all the little details, it will give you confidence for, game night.
No, I love that. Yeah. The confidence comes from those little details and they add up for sure.
Sure.
And, I know a lot of the players I play with, and they're just like, early, back when I was like 19, 20, and in my young days, back when I was playing a bit of junior and then university,
We
the
played
guys.
against each
Yeah,
other.
we did. Yeah, yeah. I'm probably on the bench mostly. So, or I was checking on the third line. So, um, that's where I usually was in the O. But yeah. And I just remember guys like, I'm going to train so hard. That's like, that gives you that confidence when you're in the season. It's like, I know how hard I train, and nobody can take that away from me. And it's those little details, that's, you got to own those, but you got to do them. And that's, it goes back to your first point. You can't cut corners. And because if you're cutting corners, you cut corners. And then when you're not getting the results or you don't get those things, it's like, well, you maybe know you didn't deserve them. So it's a whole kind of, downward spiral in that sense. So you got to
Yeah.
be putting in the work, not cut the corners, and do those things that adds up.
Right.
The other thing I'd love to get your take on as well, especially playing, that many years in games in the NHL, is just, the opinions of others. And because often, like, if you don't get drafted, or, you don't put up the points, or your coach isn't playing you as much, or people are criticizing you, or, and then as well as like when you get in the NHL, like the news might be criticizing you, and those kind of things happen if the team's not doing well. How do you felt that you filtered out what everybody else thought, and not be so worried about that, and letting that affect how you felt about yourself? Obviously you might be aware of it, but like you already said once, you did a pretty good job not focusing on the noise. But how would you maybe describe that in terms of what other people think and their opinions, and throughout at all the different levels?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have social media for a long time, so I think that
Yeah.
helped. I think
Yeah.
that's a new challenge for young athletes. I know when I did get social media because of pressure from team. I don't have Twitter or anything like that because of just comments and stuff like that. So I think um, it's definitely harder to block it out now, the noise. Like when I was like when we were playing junior, there was like a couple forums, but I would just stay away from those. But
Yeah.
other than that, you wouldn't really get too much. But I think it's a new challenge for young athletes. But at the end of the day, like when we're talking about working out, nutrition, it's talking about good habits and living a good life, being a good person, and not worrying about what other people are thinking, just being the best person you can be, and getting away from that hockey mindset that you have to be a certain way. Just do more than just hockey. Learn about yourself. It will give you confidence as a person. Confidence will then translate into your game, and you won't care about what other people have to say, because when you're away from the game, you'll have other hobbies, doing other things. I think that's something my dad instilled in my brother and I from an early age, and especially me with being so focused on hockey. He came home with a guitar and gave me lessons, and he played a little bit when he was a kid, but that was something I could just do on my own. I had like a book, and it would just take my mind off of hockey and other things like that. And a lot of the really good hockey players I've played with, they have other hobbies that they're very passionate about. And a lot of guys that I've played with, I can't say they were like that. Like I played with Big Buff in
Hmm.
Winnipeg, and he's a big fisherman and loves fishing. So he gets out of the rink, his mind's still thinking about hockey, but he goes on wines, and he just looks at his tackle or something. But that's his way of escaping the game. So when he does go back to hockey, he's 100% in. And because if you're always thinking about hockey and that's the only thing you do, you're going to burn out.
Oh, 100%. And that's a huge identity problem, right? Because and you think about worrying about what other people think. If you're, I am only just a hockey player, or I'm only just this athlete, and you
Yeah.
have a tough day, it's like, well, then that means, like, does that mean I'm a bad person now too? Like, this, all of who I am is tied into one thing. It's important to be a well-rounded person, as you're talking about, and then that there's more to you than just this, and there's the skills that you have are not just limited to your sport or hockey. And
Yeah.
so, and then that also helps you then filter out what other people think, because they're maybe they're criticizing one area, but there's more to you than that, and those people don't know those other areas to you. We talk a lot about, and the other thing I always like to reinforce, it'd be good to get your take on it, is just the concept of, you can't please everybody, right? And it was a little easier for you to filter it out when there wasn't so much social media and it wasn't so prominent. And same for me. Like, I was talking to somebody today, it was like, I didn't have YouTube, just go YouTube stuff and Instagram and look up things, and it wasn't so accessible in our day. But but it doesn't change the fact that, you were going to get criticized as athletes, especially as you rise up. And I don't know if you want to just touch any more about that, your identity, and again, filtering out, sometimes some of the critics or criticism maybe you got at that high level, if at all. Hopefully you didn't get much, but I'm
Yeah.
assuming
Well,
there's that pressure, right? So
yeah. I mean, coaches can criticize.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
think with how the game's going, and especially with how we've learned about mental health and everything, I think coaches have to be a lot different now. I think before it was just yell and scream and just lose it
Yeah.
in between periods and in video. But it's about teaching. It's about I'm excited to coach because I'm excited to be teaching. It's what I want to see what I believe if it works, and I'm confident in that, because I think you got to be calm. You teach a player to be calm, because I used to get I may say I was these things, but I was still crazy. Like I was still
Yeah.
like there was snap showing going on, but I'd be holding my stick like that. And
Yeah.
I think the way to teach the game is to teach a player calmness, and to be aware and alert and just like zoned in, but like not like freaking out about what I think. You should be worried about what your teammates think. You got to be accountable to yourself. How does that start? By those habits we talked about. Are you getting up and getting a good breakfast in? Are you getting your work in? Are you getting, is your room tidy? It's as simple as that. Like, are you living like a disaster? But, if you're putting good habits forward and you're holding yourself accountable, now you're accountable to your teammates. If you're accountable to your teammates, good things are going to happen. Being a good teammate is the best. It's the best thing you can do. There's not every player is like the most skilled player. Sometimes the guys that make it are good teammates and they're doing the things right off the ice. So it's not too much worrying about what people think. You just got to keep that focused and know that you're doing the right things. And that goes back to being calm. Like when it comes to coaching, I don't think you yell at a kid. I don't think you scream. I think you got to teach and you got to be patient as a coach. And like I said, how you are is going to reflect and teach these young players, and they're going to start to mimic you. They're going to mirror what you're doing. And especially as a player who's made it to the highest levels, I know I can influence players, and I don't want to be doing it in a negative way. It's got to be positive. And you see a lot of players now like talking about the mental side of things more and more. And I think these players that are coming in are more positive. Like I look at like the young skilled players on Toronto, like Marner and Matthews. They look like they're having so much fun playing. And I remember like 20 years ago when I was watching the game, it's like everybody looked miserable and like it was like screaming and like it was just different. So I think coaches have to adapt with the times as well. And I think it's an exciting time for hockey.
Yeah, no, I love that. And because definitely you need to be having fun when you're playing at your best, right? And
Sure.
it doesn't mean you're smiling the whole time, but you're relaxed yet focused, and so that sweet spot of having that in focus, but yet not being too tense where you're like you said, squeezing the stick too tight. Now, I'd love to get more of your take on coaching, because obviously that's something you're interested in. That's something I've done a lot of research in my, master's and doctoral work, and done a lot in practical. Like you said, I've coached in the GTA area as well. What would you say some of like the lessons you learned? You just touched on some, but some of the lessons learned directly from some of your favorite. You don't have to name names, but favorite, and then even like worst coaches, because a lot of the things I learned, like maybe you kind of alluded to, were from the coaches that weren't so great. And I was like, I don't like the way he's doing this. Like, it's just like, this is not helping. This is hurting. Like, and so that's one of the reasons I got into sports psychology and coaching and the research side of things, was because, just like you wanted to, try it out and take my stab at it and have an influence, but also just understanding that, like, what does work and what doesn't work, and see that. And so I'd love to get your kind of take on it from your experiences. Obviously you've had a range of coaches and obviously some pretty high level coaches. What are some of those best practices you've gotten so far?
Well, the things I disagreed with were like mind games. I think a lot of coaches would just do weird things just to kind of mess with players at times. I think
Yeah.
you got to be open and honest with your players. I think you never dismiss hard work. It's something that you're always going to be preaching. It's just like I said, when the coach blows his whistle, getting to the board quick, showing that you're strong, not showing you're huffing and puffing, like just that poker face. But accountability, and I never cared for a coach that kind of would let things slide. I think you got to be strict in a sense, but if you let something slide with certain players and then you're hard on other guys, you're not being accountable to your players, and you're teaching players to not be accountable to themselves and to their teammates. So I think there's the one thing that I'm definitely going to stress is, there's going to be no BS. It's just going to be, it's going to be professional. It's going to be the way that I would have liked it, that the way I talk to a lot of players, that the way they see it. And, the coaches that I really liked when I played were a lot of guys that played the game at high levels, because they knew what it was like to compete. They knew what it was like to watch a player block a shot and like feel like that pain. They knew what that felt like. And, sometimes coaches, I think, don't realize like how hard it is out there or how hard it is on the player. And sometimes a player just needs to talk and you just need to listen. And, I'm excited to work with these players. And like I said, to see if my beliefs translate to like really good hockey. But I think if you got the players in a good mental state and they're having fun playing the game, I can't see it not being successful. So, and at the very least, making their hockey experience a fun one.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I coached for a while. One of my favorite things we used to do is just like my job was just to kind of like guide them and give them structure and just let them have fun. Whereas a lot of coaches, like, they impose themselves too much or they get too much involved and they're actually making it worse. And
Yeah.
then when you're, competing against other coaches, it's like, it's the coach that's, taking his team down by over being too hard or not creating the right mentality. So no, those are really cool takeaways and points. A couple other things I want to make sure to touch on was related just to like your mental preparation throughout, and especially like, the grind of being in the NHL and the demand of jumping through, like even just your World Juniors experience as well. Like that's the high pressure situations. How did you mentally prepare? What were your kind of different routines and your mentality throughout your career? I don't know if there's any kind of key lessons and takeaways and suggestions from that.
I think I just always did the same thing. Like it was exactly the same from how I put my gear on to the time I would warm up. Everything was just the same. It was just, as soon as I woke up that day, it was kind of keep everything loose until morning skate. And then as soon as morning skate was done, it was like meal, sleep, amount of water I would take in. Everything was just calculated. I think it's a lot about like learning about your body, like what works for you. So it's trial and error. Maybe you'll figure it out right away and it works, or maybe it's going to take you a little while. I was always fiddling with stuff, and once I got it, I just kind of stayed with things, ice baths, just doing everything kind of the same way all the time. And because I knew if I would just be focused on my day, like it kind of kept my mind off the game, I guess, and just kind of kept me going up the ladder until the game time. So I was always just doing the exact same thing, from sleeping at the same time, getting up and stretching and then listening to music with my roommate or whatever, but it was always the same. And I felt comfort in if it was the unknown, I'd be lost. When something kind of popped up, that was probably where I could have used some more mental strength at a younger age, because as I got older, I was kind of like, whatever, I'll figure it out. But when I was younger, something like that would phase me a lot more. So it's something that I think can be a good thing, but also you need to sometimes be able to adapt and not get so riled about maybe something so minor, right? So
Yeah, no, for sure. The difference between having a routine and a superstition, right? So
yeah.
something doesn't go your way. Routines are huge. I'd also love to get your take on dealing with success, right? So like, obviously when you made that jump from going from your second year in the OHL to then second round draft pick, right? And then, making, not too long after getting the jump and being in the NHL and sticking it out there and carving yourself out a career. I want to like, there were moments of like, how you dealt with that, because sometimes when guys have success, they let it get to their head and then they come crashing down in a way. So obviously that didn't happen for you. So well done. I don't know if you want to maybe speak to that kind of concept of how you handled and embraced that success so that you could just keep moving forward as well.
I would say, like, honestly, like, it probably did go to my head at times. I think I'd be lying if I said it didn't. I
Yeah.
think when you're a teenager and then all of a sudden you're getting drafted or good things are happening. That's the guidance. That's good coaching. That's being around a good mentor. I think that's something that I could have benefited more from at that age, because you really don't know much about yourself when you're 18, 19, 20, maybe ever. But um, and then all of a sudden you have a big bright light shining on you, and you're getting all these like questions, but it's just scripted and stuff. So I think it's tough. It's tough when you're doing it kind of alone and you don't have anybody to kind of bounce any ideas off of. I think when it does go to your head, it's kind of just like a little bit of a shield. You're just like kind of protecting yourself from other people that you don't know, from who you really are, because it's you've been in dressing rooms, it's quite intimidating at times, and I was kind of more of a laid back guy and pretty calm, so it can be a little intimidating in those dressing rooms, especially when you go to pro and you're a young guy and there's 30-year-old guys in there, and you know, they've been there for a long time and you're the new guy, so it's tough. It's tough, but ultimately it's about like knowing who you are. It's getting back that calmness. It's like I said, if you have other things away from the game and you're not going home and thinking about things that don't really matter. We waste so much energy on, you know, does the coach like me? Does my teammates, you know, do they whatever care about whatever, you know? And it's like those things don't matter. Focus on yourself. Just keep doing your thing. It's like these guys might be going to this party, but it's Thursday night. You got a workout Friday. Friday's the hardest workout. Are you going to go there at 60% and dog it? Are you going to sleep through it? Or are you going to not go out with your friends and get to work on Friday? And then, you know what? They're going to miss that, but you're now a step ahead. And it's like having those right habits and ultimately like just that calmness and just being okay with whatever comes your way.
Yeah, awesome. Well, a couple little more questions here, and we'll open it up. One, just about, you know, some of your any highlights from in the NHL, some of your favorite team, or your, you know, highlights in your NHL career. You know, any kind of cool favorite stories you want to make sure to share. Love to, you know, I know everybody would be interested in that.
I think I just loved scoring in the NHL. Like like the feeling. So, you know, just a big goal or a highlight of the night type of thing. And you know, it's just, that was the thrill that I always, like growing up, I was always a goal scorer. In the NHL, I was more of a checker, but you know, just when I did score, just that's what you dream about. So just like looking around and seeing the fans going wild, that's that like ultimate rush. That's what I miss. That was the high that I do miss. But it was fun playing in Vancouver, Florida. I've really enjoyed both those places quite a bit. Florida gave me my start. It wasn't so crazy there where you could still, nobody knew who the Panthers were. So
Yeah.
that probably helped for like things not going in my head, because I didn't really know what the NHL was like until I got to like Vancouver and especially Toronto. But I was an older guy, so I was kind of more mature by that time, which was probably good. But I loved playing in Vancouver. We had a great group of guys. We had a good team. Got to learn a lot from the Sedins. Speaking about hard work, like the Sedins are two of the hardest working players I've ever played with. Like insane, their cardio and they're big road bikers and runners, and they're freaks. And then to play in Toronto, just like being a Toronto kid, that was a dream come true. Just to lace them up in front of my parents in that rink, score a goal, you know, just to wear that jersey was special. And then you know, just a lot of great memories. So yeah, the game's been good to me, and that's why I want to give back to the game now. And been a little reluctant to coach because I have heard about parents, but I think I have a lot to offer to not just teach kids, but to teach the parents as well.
Oh, 100%. And maybe I'll touch base later, and we could, you know, I've got some things to help you maybe with those parents of the minor hockey.
Yeah,
So maybe I'll help you out there.
yeah.
Two other little things, and then we'll move on. One, not having a visor like you, that's, you know, you're one of the few players, I think, one of the last guys not to wear a visor. What's, we want to just maybe do you speak about that? What was obviously, you know, that's kind of interesting, I think. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, my mom hated it. So,
Yeah.
well, the worst one I ever took, we were playing New Jersey, and I was in front of the net battling with um, David Clarkson, and Dmitry Kulikov from the point took a slap shot, and it hit his stick, and I had just enough time to like move my head down. There's not enough time to move like this, but just enough time to do that. And I took it right in the eyebrow, and that sliced my whole eyebrow open, and the guys on the bench could hear it. And so that was the scariest one, and some skates up. But I was never really too scared about the no visor. I just liked, I was like a big sweater. So when the visor was on, with the NHL, like the TV lights and everything, I would just fog up. So I really just did it because I wanted to see better. And I mean, I knew what I was risking. It sounds crazy, but I definitely liked. I definitely had that old school mindset, so I thought it was kind of cool. But I was aware it was pretty dumb for the post calls I had, for sure. So
Yeah, well, I'm glad it worked out. It was just an
yeah,
interesting question. We'll open it up here in a second. Last thing, is there anything you want to say, but particularly any other suggestions or recommendations for athletes or hockey players specifically as well, working their way up, trying to get to the next levels. What would you suggest, recommend, any, other words of wisdom you'd like to pass on?
just focus on your fitness. Just be the fittest guy in the room always. That will always get you noticed. If you're coming to camp low body fat, in shape, and you're just out working everybody in the weight room, it always starts in the weight room. The first thing you always do is always a team workout. So if you're taking care of those little details, you're getting noticed right off the hop. And it's the hardest thing in this game is to get noticed. It's hard to get noticed in this game to move up the ranks. So those are those little things that will give you that extra little edge and extra little bit of confidence on the ice.
Yeah, no, I love that. And that was something similar I did. I wasn't, the most, but I took that very serious. And the thing I like from it, from a mentality thing, is like, it's very tangible. It's really easy to put in, like, it's, this is what you do to get stronger, faster, fitter in nutrition. It's, whereas like working on your skill and your game sense and hockey IQ and playmaking, those are harder skills that are softer. It's not as easy and obvious to work on. You got to definitely work on them too. But that physical fitness thing is just like, it's just an effort. It's just a will piece. You got to show up day in, day out and grind through the gym. So no, I love that as a key takeaway and focus. Awesome. Well, I'm sure, we got some of our guys here will have some questions. Again, thank you for all of this. So we'll open up if guys raise their hand or they can type it in. They'll type them in here. What was the hardest jump from league to league? That's a great question.
Um, I think I want to say junior, from like AAA to junior, just because I was moving away from home, living with a different family, in a town I'd never been before. At least like when you're going to pro, you're kind of used to being on your own. So, and I think that was definitely the toughest, because I wasn't expecting it either. Like I said, I was a 6th-round pick, and I was committed to Thornhill Junior A team. I was thinking a lot about school, so it kind of came at me quick, and I made a decision pretty quick. So that was pretty tough to just. That jump was definitely tough.
Yeah, it's a big transition for sure. What about your OHL career? So, for like the team you played, they asked is Belleville, but then second question kind of related to that was, did you ever consider any options other than the OHL, like going
Yeah,
NCAA?
yeah, I thought about school quite a bit. That's what my parents were really hoping I would do. I think it's a great option. I think it gives you a lot more options. I
Yeah.
think you get your schooling, and I think if you are good enough, you're going to make it. But if you are a very good player and you have one good year in school, I mean, now all of a sudden you might not be drafted. You're a UFA. So you can go to any team. You're an older player. They have less games, less wear and tear on your body. They do a lot more training. So the guys that I always went to camp with, like when I went to camp, the most in shape guys were always typically school guys, because they worked out so much during the season. So they were always like very, very fit players. And you get a lot of options with going to school, where the OHL kind of limits a lot of options, but it's a good league too. I mean, you get your school paid for, and it's a good league as well.
Oh, good question. How did you handle playing in front of 20,000 people every game?
I just never really looked up. I just kind of just when I scored, but I honestly never really like noticed it, to be honest. I just kind of did my thing, and I was just kind of stuck on the ice. I didn't really, like I said, when it was like a big moment, you kind of noticed it, but never really gave it much thought.
No, for sure. And I talk a lot about like, you don't have to worry about the context. The game is the game. And like, it doesn't matter if the bowl's full or empty, the game's the same. So, but often we get too caught up in the context, or you're looking in the stands too much. So a great answer.
Yeah, I was usually more concerned about, a guy like Lucic out there or Char. So some guy have a
Yeah.
beer. So yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough. I can agree with that.
Yeah.
What was your biggest difference in coaches that you noticed at different levels? Yeah, coaches at different levels, how did they coach differently?
I think in pro they leave you alone more. They definitely like you're an adult. You're a man. So it's more like a job. They're not going to baby you really at all. Junior, you're a younger man. I think AAA they're around. It's just different. It's just junior. It's kind of like you're living on your own. It's kind of just your team and your coach and trainers. That's really it. So if you have a good coach, you're going to learn a lot from them. It's a developmental league, so you need a good coach in those leagues to kind of progress. I think it's important to have good AAA coaches that have coached guys or been through it themselves to kind of give you good pointers, because once you do get to pro, it's kind of you're on your own. You got to figure out yourself now for a change.
Yeah, no, for sure. And what about, so you said you touched on this a bit already, but again, going from that 2 goals to 100 in a year, back when you're playing minor hockey, what was your mentality, or like, and how did you train during that year? What that was when you were 5 that made that
Yeah,
jump 5 to 6?
but it was kind of like it was always kind of like that. In the OHL, I started off slow, and
Yeah.
I think I always needed to just find confidence, but I found confidence in just working really hard. Good mentors. Like when I went to pro, I lived with Stephen Weiss, so I just watched what he would do and just kind of made decision to, work really hard like he did. Or in junior, just seeing the guys that were doing well and just being like, I'm going to make a commitment to be that guy on the team in a year or two, like be the top guy. It was always like that. It was always, I guess, a competitiveness in myself, with not with myself, but with teammates, and just wanting to be the best player I can be. And it's tough. Some good bounces, some luck too with that, because a coach has to like you, coach has to trust putting you on the ice as well. So I was always a good defensive player, so that probably helped me get some opportunities, but it's just those little details. But it's ultimately just being competitive and just wanting it, and having a little bit of luck on your side.
Oh, for sure. No, I love all those answers. And I don't know if you want to also kind of maybe just mention some of your experiences in the NHL with like some of your favorite teammates, and the travel and the time you guys spend together, because it's quite a bit of travel, and you
Yeah,
guys are on flights, and like
you go hard.
yeah, the kind of the physical and mental demands of being a pro hockey player, just kind of tie into that as well. We didn't get to touch on that yet. I'd love for you to share that, because a lot of these guys, it's like this fantasy of playing the NHL that it's it doesn't take a lot of work when you get there. It takes a ton of work when you're there, right?
Yeah,
So
I mean, you're on to the next city after every game, so it's a lot of late nights. It's hard to sleep after a lot of travel, and especially if you got a game the next day, it's tough. But it's just, yeah, that's the grind. That's so you never escape it. It's not like you get to the NHL and it's easy. It's always hard. It's always it's tough. It's tough to just get your rest in. So you got to, like I said earlier about accountability, it's like being accountable to your teammates. If you got to stretch in the middle of the plane, you get it in. Like you gotta get your rehab in. You got to get all the work in, and it's hard though. It was very daunting and very tiring at times, just having to know you have a 5-hour flight somewhere, and you get off the flight and now it's like beautiful weather, and you get off another flight and it's snowing out, and it's just like, it's crazy. It really is. You feel like a rock star almost, just flying into all these different cities, and you're out, and you guys keep your focus, because there's a lot of people out there that are trying to pull you into different directions. Come to my restaurant, come here, come here for a drink, and you got a game the next day, and it's like, you got to be focused. You got to stay the course, and you find time to unwind and have some fun, but you gotta be focused. You gotta be laser focused, and the best players in the world are all like that.
Awesome. Well, if anybody else has any more questions, you can throw them in. But one last one, we'll make sure to throw it in. We'll wrap it up. And again, I really appreciate all your time and these great insights. Just maybe a bit more about the World Juniors. Like I always know, in Canada, we put so much pressure and emphasis on the World Juniors. And when you're young, that's probably was quite the pressure. How was that, tournament and experience for you?
It was pretty scary, because thankfully we didn't have Instagram or Twitter, but I did have Facebook back then, and I remember just being nervous, just being like, you're expected to win for Canada, you're expected to win a gold medal, and it's quite the task. You're playing a lot against all the best players in that junior age group in the world, and we were fortunate enough to pull it off. And I remember we went to overtime, but we had 1 minute left in the game, and Hartsburg put my line out there, and I went to pass it to Halischuk, I remember, and it probably went like just 2 inches in front of his stick and went all the way down. I remember watching him work so hard, and he just couldn't catch up to the puck, and ended up icing it. And then I lost the draw, and they scored. So that sent the game to overtime, and just being like that's that emotions. That's handling your emotions. It was like in the room, just like wanting to cry and being like, oh my God, I just let down the guys. But then being like, the game's not over. I got to be strong here. I got to be tough. I got to be accountable. And I ended up driving the net in overtime, and Hallie ended up banging the puck in. So
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we gave it up, but we kept our composure. We kept our emotions in check and kept our hand close. Because when I was in that room looking around, like, I literally wanted to start crying, and I didn't want to play hockey anymore.
Yeah.
I was like, if we lose this game now, like, this is my fault. Like, how this is gonna be all over TSN. So it's like, it's just juggling that crazy game. So it was wild, but it's something I'll never forget. My family was there, and I was very lucky and very blessed to be selected to that team.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And you definitely got to manage the expectations and emotions from others, and that's pretty cool. I was actually Halschuk. We roomed together for a bit when we were playing together at St. Mike's. So
he's a good guy.
He's a good guy. So that was pretty cool when he scored that goal. And you being a part of it, going on the net, it's always a good place to be. Yeah. Last question, somebody else sent it in, and then we'll wrap it up. What motivated you from becoming a 6th-round pick in the OHL to being a 2nd-round pick in the NHL?
Honestly, just probably looking up the draft list and just being like, I should have been 1. Like, that's how my mind was. Like, I was just, I never got mad or anything. Like, I remember just seeing it, being like, just in shock, kind of just being like, I played with, like, we had the 1st overall pick in Belleville, so I went and played with John Hughes, and I played with him on summer hockey, and they put him to wing and let me play center, and I won MVP of the tournament. And just a year later, I'm going 101st, and he's going 1st, and I just remember being like, okay, I guess it's just knowing what I'd done in my past and just being confident in my abilities. I was just like, I know that the gap isn't that big. Like, I know that's not the case. I just got to make everybody else know that. And then we ended up trading John. He's a good, very good hockey player, good teammate. But ultimately, they traded him away to give me his spot. So it's that competitive fire, I guess, and just being kind of like, you know, just taking what you want. And just because you're on a team doesn't mean you're a bad teammate if you're competitive with each other. You should be pushing one another. And, you know, that wasn't that. I love that about hockey too. I love like pushing one another like in workouts and practice and games. And it's that drive. So one of the best players I ever played with was Blake Wheeler, but he competes in practice. Like, he wants it every day. Like, he wants to be the best player. And I think if you're going to be a good player, and it doesn't matter where you're drafted, where you fall in the NHL draft, if you're even drafted at all, it's just going in, believing in what you can do, and just committing to it, and just being like, you know what, I'm just going to let that dog inside of me out and just take what's mine, and not give a shit or care about what anybody that doesn't know me or really see me play thinks about my game, because I know what I can do. And it was just that kind of mindset.
No, I love that. And it, you know, we've said a few times, there's a lot of guys in here from the draft, and work with a lot of guys in that OHL draft and after, and then going to even NHL drafts. Whereas, you know, it's one thing to get drafted, and it's nice to get drafted, nice to get drafted high, but, you know, proving people wrong is, you know, that, like, you know, a great thing. And proving yourself is a way stronger feeling. And I love how you said, you know, you knew what you were capable of, and you knew the gap wasn't that big, even though, you know, other people might have said, you know, there's a gap. And focusing on having that strong inner voice. So, no, I love this. It was fantastic. I really appreciate you coming on, and we'll make sure, you know, the rest of our listeners and athletes we work with will definitely get lots out of this as well. So, and so I'll let you enjoy the rest of your night, and with your, I guess your daughter's probably asleep now, or she's up and off, but
Yeah, they don't know. I got out of having to put her to bed. So
yeah. Same. So
yeah.
7 o'clock time is perfect for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, enjoy, and then we'll all stay in touch with your minor hockey. Maybe I'll be able to help you keep the parents in line. That's a big
That'd be
one.
good.
So
Absolutely.
awesome.